I'm Mark Z, and you're watching Thorin, the best interviewer behind Travis Gafford.
This is episode 49 of Narrative Wake. We're still doing them during Worlds now. We're actually on something of a dedicated schedule. I know it seems, on the one hand, like I've done an awful lot of shows with Loco Doko, and that have all been on his channel. And then Kelsey's been grinding away in the trenches, doing her own videos. And then now all of a sudden I come back. It's like I'm like the husband who comes back all soaking drunk, you know, like, oh, how are you doing or whatever. And they're like, get away from me, piece of shit. Where were you all night? It's like, no, I was just out, walking the dog or whatever. But no, we're still part of an entirely committed co-host duo here that is very much going to see this Worlds through to the bitter end. Hopefully that China wins for once. That would be a nice turn of affairs, wouldn't it? Kelsey's camera is frozen already, as I said that. But what's great is it's frozen in a pose that looks as though she's like a very sort of like demure, like a kawaii girl who was like very shy by what I was saying there. So it made it better, if anything. Like it was actually a great time. There you go. There.
Is it still frozen or?
No, it's back now. Don't worry. Okay. So anyway, we don't have the technology to edit that either. So that's just all going live. So we'll keep going with that. So Kelsey, here's the question I have for you. I saw that there was much excitement and jubilation that you gained 900 YouTube subs in the last couple of weeks. That must be like, here's the thing I want to just like, I'm worried that this could go badly, okay? Because that's like a great sign. Things are going the right direction. I always hope this would be the case. But I don't want this to be like when everyone hops on someone's Twitch stream, you know, and blows them up completely after a week. And then, you know, a week later, everyone's gone and they're back down to being nobody, you know. So like, just let's have a tempered reaction to this. How do you feel about how the individual coverage is going?
I feel better about it than I have in the past, so that's probably a good sign. I don't know. I feel more confident. I feel like that's translating more, but at the same time, I thought you were going to go a different direction. I thought you were going to, you know, make me feel small with my 900 new subscribers. So
I would never do something like that. Here's the thing. All that matters is the quality of the content people create, not the hits that they get. As I tell all my friends who are the content creators who are struggling to get a lot of hits. And then I'm just like, listen, guys, all that money, the steam, you know, like industry influence, it's really overrated. You guys, you're doing something pure. You're doing something real special for the game. And I think you should just keep doing that because obviously, yeah, in the end, I was just some sort of evil kingpin type figure keeping everyone else down. They were right all along, Kelsey. They were right all along. If we'd listened to them, they were right all along. So anyway, speaking of people trying to make their way in the industry, just struggling to do what they can, we've got someone in the bottom right-hand corner who I know must just love. It's like there was a great line I always reference, right, from the movie Blade, one of my all-time favourite movies, 1998 action thriller starring Wesley Snipes, in which he has this line where he just says, some motherfuckers always trying to ice skate uphill. Now, if you're trying to be the strategic coach of Schalke 04, I feel like that has to fit into your wheelhouse because you've got all these players whose playing style is literally set in stone for years and years. And you're trying to tell these guys, there's a global meta and these are the new picks. And no, you don't have to just have your counter pick every time. And then they're going, yeah, that's all great and everything, but I want to do things the way I do it. So, André Guilhoto, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Okay. I mean, it's I don't know. It wasn't that hard, especially for players like Nuktak. No, this guy managed to play 20 champions on a split. So
he managed to pick 20 champions. Yeah.
At the beginning it was a bit rough, but I guess I managed to seduce them a bit onto not the global meta, but I guess our own meta, and that's what's working as well for Europe at Worlds. So. Okay.
Yes, absolutely it is. As tends to be, funnily enough, the case every single Worlds. And like, you know that meme where it's like, oh, is that the time? It's like, that should be like the thing of like, play your own style should be like on every single clock hand. And then NA every year is like, oh, what time is it? What do I do? And then EU's just like, oh, just keep doing what I'm normally doing. Cool. Wow, this works then. So, right, our last guest for this episode in the bottom left-hand corner is Inero. Now, people might know him in the past. he was working as the coach of Echo Fox. Not even the good Echo Fox. The one where it was just like Froggen plus 4 people that were left from the budget that was left over. And then he's now just been announced as the new head coach of Golden Guardian. So again, speaking of people who really take on a challenge in life, they say, you know what? They say it can't be done. I say, why not? Like, welcome Inero.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, only worked there for like 3 months during that initial Echo Fox one, by the way.
Not your fault then. Okay. Not your
yeah,
fault.
Reddit seems to think that I've been there for years. At least one guy did on a comment, so that was pretty funny. But yeah, from Echo Fox.
Fair enough. So yeah, again, we'll just clarify there for legal purposes. This was in his contract on appearing. Like, he in no way was to do with anything to do with the Hooney debacle, carries no tanks, or any other such scandals. Just associated but not tainted, as they used to say of the Watergate scandal back in the 70s. So, right, let's start the episode then. We've got so much to talk about since it's been Worlds. So let's actually just go group by group initially with some of the big storylines. So, Inero, I'll go to you first on this one, mate. A big theme of this World's obviously because everyone's lost their shit completely on Reddit, because unfortunately Riot made the mistake of putting too many NA analysts on certain European games, and therefore the European fans didn't feel like they got enough credit, etc. What did you think of the way that Group A went down, and particularly how G2 were able to perform? I mean, were you someone, for example, coming in from the play-ins who thought, like, that doesn't look like that good a team, or they're not going to do much? What were your thoughts for G2 in this group?
To be honest, I predicted G2 was going to be third, and I still think that they should have gotten third.
Obviously, it was close.
What?
It was obviously close. They had the tiebreaker.
Yeah, it was really close. I mean, Flash Wolves basically just gave the tiebreaker game over and said we don't want to win with the way they picked anyways, with the Mord and the Heimer thing, because that's not a counter pick at all. And then Perks hard smurfed the lane that game. But overall, G2, like, watching them, I thought the whole time it seemed like they kind of had the right idea of what to do for the most part. Like, they always seemed to be doing the correct thing, and then individually someone would mess it up, and it happened all the time. There were like really bad positioning mistakes that would just happen randomly. It was like same thing that would happen to Team Liquid, you know, with like the video that the Chinese announcers made with Pobelter and Ole getting caught out randomly during like transition between different side waves. That was happening pretty often for G2. So watching that, it didn't seem like they were that clean, but overall laning wise, like Wonders looked really good, which I'm happy to see. I'm happy to see people like Wonder and Licorice popping off at the tournament and doing really well, but I don't think G2 did that great. To be fair, I didn't think Afrika did that great either. I thought Group A was kind of a disappointment overall, because even it's a Vietnamese team, right? Phongvu? I don't know. Yes. I'm pretty sure they're from Vietnam. Yes. Everyone was hyping them up as like the next TPA, whatever the hell that means. I don't even know what that's meant to mean. Like, they were going to be amazing, and they looked okay. I didn't think the group was that great, to be honest. And it was one of the more boring ones to watch, really.
Okay. Right, what do you think on this one, Andrea? Because I'm kind of with an error on that, actually. That's one of the reasons why I personally didn't go too ham about G2 succeeding. It's like, on paper, when everyone told me like Flash Wolves is going to be really good, and obviously Afrika I thought would be very good because it's such a fantastically versatile team. When I saw those teams, I thought, right, if G2 can get out, they're going to have to play amazingly. Oh, no, actually, everyone's going to play like shit. Right, go on. Well, fair enough. If anything, I guess this is the world you come through, G2. What did you think of this group, Andrea?
I mean, to be honest, I actually don't think it was a boring group, especially for the spectators. I think it was quite funny to see almost the randomness of each game and the way that each team was playing. But in terms of quality, obviously the quality of the group was quite low. I think it's also quite surprising how did Flash Wolves manage to not go through after the first round that they had in that group.
Yes.
And Afrika, I guess it's not even that Afrika just woke up and suddenly on the second round just managed to win against everyone and here they go, they are first, because I don't think they even played that well. I just think that literally no one progressed at the exception of G2. I think that G2 was the only team that kind of progressed inside of this group, mostly from the play-ins. I think that on the play-ins they just played quite poorly, but honestly, I think that G2 just went into this group, at least that's the impression that I got, in a way where, okay, this is our weapons, this is the way that we want to win, and teams just seemed to be able or to be available to give them the small amount of weapons that they have to win. And so G2 just managed to scrap some wins, and then they just won against Flash Wolves on what Inero said, that Heimerdinger or that I don't know, Mordekaiser with the Tom Kench,
Yeah,
apparently.
it's so bad.
So
I did like that though, because that was like, you have OP shit. Well, look at this. It's like, that isn't OP shit.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but you never played this before, have you? It's like, but why are you doing that though?
I mean,
Watch.
if we look kind of to that lane, is like Heimerdinger is bad against lanes that have good lane setup, good gank setup, and you can camp him before level 6. And basically, Mordekaiser is good with all inner supports, so that you can suppress the ranged advantage that you have. But they decided to pick against Heimerdinger, Tom Kench, that is also bad with Mordekaiser. So in that case, I was quite confused. But I think that overall, this group was just low quality. I think G2 managed to find the weapons that they needed in order to scrap some wins, and all the 3 teams allowed them to. But I think that on a best of 5, maybe Africa has a chance because it's against an NA team, but G2, I don't see them going through.
Okay.
I think the Tom Kench thing was like, okay, kind of a denial pick. And also they thought, okay, Tom Kench has some advantages into Heimerdinger with like the ability to have gray health. And then this is a high sustain lane. And eventually you have a gap closer. And obviously W works while you're inside Tom Kench's eat. But they really needed to impact the lane more. And I think it was actually a bigger issue with the rest of their draft because they literally couldn't get pressure in other lanes. So you're not going to contest dragons in that setup at all, and then Mordekaiser becomes not a champion, and that's it. So
Tom Kench was picked after Alistar, so G2 had already a support.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like in my head, it's a denial because I feel like G2 is a Tom Kench only team. But yeah, obviously it was picked into Alistar, which is theoretically a good counter anyway. So
I really wanted to see a good match there to like actually tiebreak it, because the one they played earlier that day was actually pretty interesting to see. It like stalled out because G2 stole the Baron away when Flash Wolves should have had it. And I really wanted to see like another matchup of that to see if like G2 was actually better than Flash Wolves. So that kind of sucked that it just basically ended in laning phase because Perks and bot lane popped off.
I think this was a really bad group for Flash Wolves as well because they don't adapt, and then suddenly all these teams start playing around their top laners, and they like don't really seem to have a good answer to that. And I think it was just a really bad group for them in general. Like basically, if you can't adapt, you're not going to do well in quarters either. But if that ends up being the meta in your group, Flash Wolves is not going to get out of it. So.
What about this then? Would Flash Wolves have made it out of some of the other groups? Because obviously they were coming in as number 1 seed, and they were a team that actually, when we had Nelson, who's from that region on the show, he actually thought they had a chance in this group because of their bot lane strength.
Yeah, I mean, there's a theoretical answer you can give that maybe the bot lane's going to matter, but I think it just ended up not. So there you go.
I don't know.
I would say Group C maybe. Is possible. Like they could have gotten out of Group C theoretically, I think, because I don't necessarily like EDG's bot lane is really coin flippy. I think you can draft pretty effectively against EDG. Flash Wolves are probably pretty familiar with them, so there was a chance that they could have gotten out of C if they were in instead of Mad, but that's about it.
I agree that maybe they could have gotten out of Group C. But I think that the biggest reason behind it is, at least I felt that overall in Worlds, that Asian teams are not doing their job properly of scouting Western teams. And I think that was a big issue to a lot of those teams. And that's also why we had a lot of upsets with this Heimerdinger shit and also with the Echo picking blind Syndra against Shizuka and stuff like that. So obviously on Group C Pro, they would have better chances, but it's mostly because Team Liquid is probably the only Western team at this tournament without a pick like that.
Sure.
Yeah. I think Group C as well, by the way, just because I think that's the one that has like the weakest set of top laners overall, other than obviously Smeb with KT and everything. But in this group, like Hanabi, who was performing pretty bad like in his own region, like in laning phase, had to play against Keen and Wonder, who are both like pretty good top laners. That's like the group they're playing against. Impact, he's playing against Ray. Like probably they can just ignore top and hope that he's going to survive and do better. And then I think Maple would have outperformed Pobelter there. Would have had a chance against EDG as well. And then like playing around their bot lane for that probably could have been okay. But I don't know. It still seemed like an okay team. They didn't seem amazing or anything.
Yeah.
Right, to close up on Group A then, what about the Afrika Freaks? Because this was a team where I do notice, even though almost everyone I spoke to before Worlds did rate them as a good team and thought they were a good team all year, I noticed not a single person from memory, I think, actually had Afrika Freaks as their champion of Worlds. I don't think anyone picked them to actually take the title, but everyone did pick them to get out of this group, I will say that. So them obviously losing the first 2 games was quite shocking. Sure, they ran it all the way back. They got out of the group in first place anyway. Right, what do we think of this? Like, André, was it shocking to you to see a Korean team look like they were going to go out? Did they play differently than you'd expect?
I think that they played obviously different that I was expecting, but I agree with Kelsey here that at the same thing that happened with Flash Wolves, I also think it happened a bit to Afrika, and it comes again to the point where I think that Asian teams did not do a good job scouting. And basically, I think that Afrika, as a team, what they seem is really dependent on Keen. And if a team can match them on top lane, it becomes harder for them to win the game. Because I think that going into mid game, they are a team that depends a lot on building their setups slowly with denying vision, pushing the waves, rotating from lane after lane, and a lot of teams, what they are doing now is playing a style a bit more aggressive and attacking the teams before they build the setup. And I think that's also made Afrika seem a bit worse. But I think that what is good about these Korean teams is that once they have a bit of a break and once they have seen everyone playing out, they are really fast and really good adapting. So I'm actually, even though they played quite worse than I was expecting in the group phase, I'm actually expecting them to be way better going into a best of 5 against Cloud9.
Yeah, to kind of snowball off the point that you made with the them getting caught out, like in the transition of like actually setting things up. I think the reasoning for that, from what I noticed, is their 1-3-1 like actual setup and using that to punish, like using wave management and matching everything up, actually looked pretty bad. So it was taking them a long time to actually set up and look for picks because their waves were just hitting at like really inopportune times. So they weren't actually positioned to have numbers advantages. So it just kind of ended up in a lot of their wins. It felt like, okay, the other team had an opening. They needed to fight them. They fought and they lost. So Afrika won the game. They got Baron something and it ended it. It never looked like they had like a really full, I don't think I saw them take a tier 2 turret like in a clean way using like waves or numbers advantages off of that. It just kind of seemed the other team would force and then lose. So I feel like that's why they're opening up to these small advantages for other teams to abuse. And I think that's like pretty troubling for them going forward.
I think the reason why I was so high on Afrika to an extent was because I really liked the way that they approached how teams in Korea reacted to them pushing really hard inside, which is that they would move too far forward in the mid and then they would get picks off of the flank. But in this scenario, if you're against teams that don't do that, then they don't really seem to have a good answer. And I think that one thing that also makes them look worse is that their draft kind of in their last game against G2 was very much, we literally don't have to do anything except wait for G2 to ink kind of, and it was just like a really underwhelming way to win your final game of group stage. So.
Okay. Right, one aspect that obviously we're going to do the specific prediction of like their series in the quarterfinals separately, but going forwards, right, we've seen Korean teams in the past come from, famously last year Samsung didn't look that great in the group stage, won the entire tournament in the end and leveled up as each playoff stage went on. Like, does Afrika actually have the pieces based on what you've seen at Worlds so far to win Worlds? Like, can they level up? Are they going to be better against different opposition? Can they actually be a team that goes on and takes the title?
No.
I don't really think so, no.
I think because their bracket is not like insane. Obviously, I still think there are good teams on that side. I will say that it's not out of the question for them to reach the final, and if they're against KT in the final, I still don't mind. I don't think their matchup stylistically against KT is bad. Like, I think it's actually pretty good. So I don't think it's out of the question for Afrika to win.
Okay.
So.
What was underwhelming to you guys then that you say no though? Because I mean, in Korea, for example, one of the things that I think shocked a lot of people about this Freaks team this year is that okay, you know some of the names, but like even the ones you know, like Kuro looked a lot better this year. Like Spirit's back to being a pretty good player. Some of the ones you didn't know, like no one really knew Keen, he was looking amazing. Tucson was like an MVP candidate. They generally were considered to be like a pretty strong team, top to bottom. But I agree. When I watched them at Worlds, that looked pretty bad actually, even though they won the group. So what was lacking in them, do you think?
It just kind of feels like the team play, like what I was mentioning earlier with the mid-game stuff, is just kind of all over the place. And the two teams they have to play to actually get to the finals, like I think actually need people to play that way to just completely abuse their advantages. Like playing against C9, they're like Keen's matching up against Licorice. I think Licorice can handle that. I think he's playing great. Jensen's playing against Kuro. I think that's going to be fine as well. Like I think they're going to be able to handle themselves in laning phase so that it's going to end up being more of like a toss-up in mid-game since both teams just play mid-game like it really, really inefficiently. So it's not going to be like a full-blown stomp. So it's hard for me to say that they're going to win because I think whoever comes through on the right side of the bracket is just going to like just take the final really easily, to be honest. And I think Fnatic are playing super well too. Even though I don't think the top matchup is too great for them, I'm pretty sure that they're going to be fine as long as they can snowball through caps against Afrika.
Okay.
I mean, what I think is mostly that the three teams, or let's say especially Cloud9 and Fnatic, that are on their side of the bracket, I think that they are aggressive enough to manage to punish them going into their mid-game transitions, and that they will not be able to set up properly, or even set up at all, properly or not. I think that Fnatic and Cloud9 are not teams that are willing to wait for an opportunity or let an opportunity slide. And as we saw as well on the group stage, teams that do that against Afrika usually get some success. Don't think that will be Cloud9 stopping them, but I don't think they will even reach to the final. I think they will lose to whoever wins from Fnatic bracket or Fnatic side.
Right. In Group B, this was the one obviously with Roll Never Give Up, Cloud9, Vitality, Gen.G. Now, funnily enough, most people actually thought that this was a group. I mean, I remember, I forget who said it, but like they actually thought this was the most boring group because everyone said, obviously RNG and Gen.G make it through. Logic being RNG's the favourite, Gen.G are Koreans because people are still running that narrative like after this year. I don't know how that one's still alive, but anyway. Now, I want to go from the top end of this. How did RNG lose 2 games in this group?
Their take on what they were supposed to play was really bad going into the second round. It was just really awful, like double bruisers with almost no way to get pressure and just like bad bot lane and only one damage threat, no answer to side lane push. No, I don't really know what their read was other than just let UZI go insane.
Yeah, kind of seemed like they were happy to wait. Like they would just wait the games out, like you mentioned earlier. Like like cool, we'll wait. We're better. Uzi will 1v9. Just didn't really work against C9 and Vitality, who don't know how to wait on that type of thing.
I think that's also kind of the reasoning. They just seemed a bit one-dimensional, but maybe because they thought they were secured already, so they didn't want to show more, or maybe they just don't have more. Maybe other people are a bit overhyped. I don't think so, but maybe that's the reason.
I think they're... Oh, go ahead, Kelsey.
I was just going to say, based on the fact that, and this isn't just confirmed from Reddit, but the fact that they are scrimming Fnatic a lot, and Fnatic kind of came into the second round with the same idea and some of the same like compositional setups, it seemed like they actually thought it was good, which is just mind-boggling to me. So, yeah.
I actually do think, though, that what we were just talking about earlier, that they're the team that didn't look so like great in groups just because they were supposed to, that can still probably just like come back and end up winning it all. For sure. Okay.
So there were no like real warning signs that they lost games here to teams that, like no one expects Cloud9 or Vitality to be winning Worlds?
Yeah, no, I don't expect those to be winning Worlds, but I don't know. I think they'll be fine. A lot of their mistakes didn't seem like it was end of the world. It was just, they already messed up and their comp doesn't really give them a way to actually fix anything in their game or to kind of come back. There's no real comeback mechanic other than just waiting and hoping the other team doesn't play. So I still think they should be okay. I really do think it's between them and like KT on the right side, but it's still up in the air.
Did these games give any sort of a blueprint though as to what you can do against RNG? Like, for example, can you even play the way that Vitality played, or was that just like only their team could do that? Does everyone have to do like super hype stuff early in the game? What do you think the blueprint is to having a chance against RNG?
That's actually kind of a hard question, because what Team Vitality did is I honestly think that no other team in the world can do it, because having a lot of experience with a lot of the guys that are on that team, that comes with a lot of energy that they put into the game, with a lot of shouting, a lot of just a lot of emotions going into the game, and that obviously can be a way that ultra aggressive they manage to win the game, or a way that ultra aggressively they manage to lose it. That's why I always describe them as a 50-50 team, and I don't think that on a best of 5 that would work against RNG. That's why I think it's for whoever plays against RNG on a best of 5, I think that it's a bit hard to say, because we already saw RNG on a best of 5 situations adapting quite well, at least from some best of 5s that I saw from them. So I actually think that on these couple of days that they have to practice and to fix stuff, that I think it will be hard to win them the same way that Vitality and Cloud9 won against them.
Okay.
We did see.
You did actually pick them, right, Kelsey? I'm pretty sure it was you who said that Vitality actually had a shot, right, because of best of 1 nature, and that they would try something weird, right?
I mean,
yeah, I actually thought Vitality. Yeah, I saw his pick on Twitter. He did put them in first. I assumed that was slight bias since he coached most of them, but
I mean, it was a bit. It was the best of fun. I don't know. But
I do agree that Vitality did have a chance, and I did say that because I think that like they actually stylistically match up fine against both the favorites going into the tournament that people had, like Gen.G and RNG. And I thought for sure that like them being in the group with Gen.G and RNG meant for sure RNG get out ahead of Gen.G at the very least, because there's no way that Vitality basically wouldn't take a game off of Gen.G at least. So it's kind of how I saw it.
Okay, right. Let's get this part out of the way immediately, because it's so rare you can ever talk shit on Koreans that like we've got to at least revel in it a little bit. Right? So why was Gen.G so awful? Because I watched some of these games and they were legitimately fucking awful.
Yeah, it just feels like they're slow. Like, feels like there wasn't any agency on trying to get a lead and push that. And against these teams like Vitality, they're all 5 people that aren't really willing to make the right decisions all the time, but they're all willing to make a decision and just commit. So they could just hard int a play on you, but they're all committed to it. And Gen.G's like, whoa, we're not trying to even play the game yet, and can just fall down to that, which is pretty embarrassing. And I think just overall, it felt like they just got ran over by stuff like that. It really didn't feel like they were showing up and playing the game to try to win it. It was more of like a stall out tactic, and it really felt like really similar to like Mad Team and the other teams like that weren't really actually doing too much at the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think that became something in common from Gen.G and Africa. The fact that exactly what you're saying, that they just become a bit slow and a bit too expecting for the enemy team to make a mistake. And to be honest, knowing Vitality the way that I know, or I can only speak by them, not by Cloud9, but I think they were doing quite similar. Gen.G was playing a lot on a way where they don't know where our jungler is, so we'll just bluff a bit here, fake a bit of pressure, they will respect it, not push this wave. After that, we can get some control on this side of the river, etc., etc. And Vitality doesn't give a shit. If you're bluffing against Vitality doesn't give a shit. And that went well, for example, against some ganks or some dives that Vitality managed to do on bot side without any jungle vision. And they managed to succeed, but that also went wrong against Cloud9, where, for example, Kikis just decided to invade after the red buff. He decided to invade the blue buff, and that just lost them games. So that's exactly how Vitality plays. But I think that against teams like Korean teams like Gen.G, that they just play really slow and expecting and bluffing a lot, I think that Vitality matches quite well. And after that, I think that Gen.G I think they just didn't have solutions at all.
I think Korea's like almost meted themselves kind of, where they got so used to playing to where they could play games slow because people wouldn't take these risks because those risks weren't worth it for the most part. And because they got so used to people not taking those risks over time, like just dealing with that forever, maybe they just started cutting out some of the steps they would do to deny those plays from even being a risk in the first place.
Okay.
And now people are just like abusing that with just uncontrolled aggression or like unstable aggression where they just take a risk. Like jungler could be there, they don't care, they just go. Maybe that's become like a problem for them. I really don't know overall, but it just feels like playing against Korean teams, if you're just faster than them, you have an innate advantage as long as you're just attempting to make random plays.
Well, okay, let's bring that topic up then, because that is something I saw actually alluded to before the group stage even began, which is that some people said that one of the reasons they thought RNG was the best team now is because Koreans were so set in the way of like, you just control, you play around vision, you make the least mistakes, the other team does something stupid, you win the game, you have all the right complete in the game to win in the team fight. But actually, some people suggested that like mid-game fighting all the time is like a more effective way to play the game. So Kelsey, how do you tie this in? What would you say on this topic? Because obviously Gen.G is the extreme example on the end of the Koreans, right?
Right. I would say that Gen.G and Afrika's problems felt very different because I felt like Gen.G just kind of didn't seem to exactly have a plan, whereas Afrika just seemed slightly more confused. I would say that they did have a plan in the game against RNG, but the other games just, I don't know. Like they seem like a team that rely on their bottom lane to get pressure, but they don't necessarily always draft for it or play for it in terms of jungle pathing or anything else. I think that they're in a really bad spot because the way that Ambition plays the early game is just ultra defensive. But since you don't have like Tracker's knife anymore or anything like this, the style is hard and just plays for wards and stuff like this. The style is like not as effective, so they tried to transition Haru in more and more. But then when Haru plays, they lose their entire main strength, which is just kind of being able to set up really well the red buff area behind Baron and look for collapses and play out team fights and control that minion wave on that side of the map. So because they don't hardly ever do that when Haru is playing, so they just seem like a team that doesn't know how to do much of anything. And it's kind of sad to see because they did look pretty good in Gauntlet, and you could see some of these weaknesses then even, but it didn't seem as bad as it was at Worlds. So.
Okay. Any thoughts on this like meta-related topic, Andrea, of how teams played, and if you could get away with this like slower pace style?
I think that at the moment, I don't think you can get away anymore. I think Kelsey touched on a quite important point. That was the Tracker's knife. I think that was really impactful for the way that Korea plays. Which if we look to one split back or 1 year back, basically the way that I would see the meta is Europe or Korea plays through jungle advantages, China plays through lanes advantages, Europe and NA try to copy one of those. It would usually be like that. Now it's obviously a bit different, especially with you, in my opinion. But I think that once the Tracker's knife disappeared and also with a bit of these changes of the trinkets, I think it just became way harder to play through the jungle when the enemy jungler is just making a play on one lane that after that can just give pressure to that lane the whole game. And especially against teams like Vitality and Cloud9, usually Koreans want to play for second clears advantages on the jungle, but before the second clear, the enemy jungler already did 3 ganks or 2 or 3 ganks, and now one of the lanes has pressure, so now you cannot invade the side that you are expecting. Now you just become lost in the game. With this uncontrolled aggression, and it's not like you can even punish him that hard because the camps just take a lot longer to spawn now, and at the same time you don't have Tracker's knife to control the side of the jungle that you want to invade. So I think that Korea got hurt a lot by this, but since as Inero said, they got so much used to play this kind of style that no team from Korea kind of tried a different or a really big aggression that no team just managed to adapt to it or just play against it. So yes, I think that the style is at the moment an issue for Korea, not because their style is bad, but because they don't know at the moment how to play against ultra aggressive teams.
I feel like this is why rookies are popping up and doing a lot better, because they make mistakes and take those risks, but they end up paying off. Like sometimes it's going to pay off and it works out. I feel like this is a problem that NA as a whole has kind of created with their own internal meta. I feel like every region does it to some extent. Yeah. Like you just meta yourselves at a certain point that it's a weakness, where NA, like isn't really doing much, and they play for late, wait for the other team to make a mistake, and they'll win off that because it works regionally. I feel like it happens everywhere, and I think it's just now starting to become maybe problematic for Korea. Like, I'm not too sure, but that is what I'm leaning towards right now is like a big problem for these teams coming in.
Okay. So if someone had said coming in that Cloud9 doesn't have a losing record against anyone in the group, they beat Gen.G, they beat RNG in a game, they beat both Vitality, that would seem basically absolutely implausible. So how did Cloud9 do it?
Yeah, I didn't expect Cloud9 to get out. I did an interview saying that Cloud9 were going to Worlds to learn and would probably just lose the group. Like, I expected them to just lose, but it kind of seems to be the case that C9 goes to Worlds, always looks way better, and I feel like they probably sit in A, don't try as hard because they just don't care, and they know they can probably get to Worlds in some way really easily with the way that they just play out regular season, and then they show up to Worlds and actually just like give a shit and try and actually go to win. But even with their bot lane being a huge liability, Licorice just holds up against like any top laner he's been against so far. The guy's pretty insane, and Jensen started doing really well in lane again, looked really good. I think right now, like mid-jungle duo, and just having like a strong top 3 side of the map is super important right now, and the way the meta seems to be playing out. And C9 pretty much has that. Their bot lane being a liability hasn't seemed to matter, and it just worked out with the 3 players they had. Like, I don't know, that group just felt like if you could win lane, you were probably going to win the game off of some really dumb team fight, and they usually had a nice winning advantage to those 3.
I actually think that coaching staff wise, they have a lot of merit. Obviously, Licorice is just a beast, and he has been dominating the group. But I felt that probably Cloud9 was the only team in that group that managed to have, at least on one of the games, a good reading on the enemy team. And I was quite surprised, for example, on their game against Vitality when they took an approach of getting globals. Obviously that comes with a lot of comfort, etc., but globals is obviously the weakness of Vitality, because if you collapse against them, it's quite easy to punish them. And the way that they managed to win their second game against RNG for me was also a lot about the plan that they had. How can they stop Sneaky from inting his ass off against Uzi, so that he doesn't completely 1v9, and Licorice was just phenomenal that game. So I think that they were, from that group, they were probably the team that had I would actually say probably the better scouting and the better adaptation going from game to game.
I think Cloud9 are a really interesting team in that they play in NA where the general standard is everyone goes mid, no one cares about sidelines, but they have a really strong top laner. And so they developed like kind of NA specific strategies to allow them to play that kind of way and deal with teams that are just trying to force mid on them. So picks like Zillion and Nocturne end up being things that they really like. And I think that those picks punish people who are trying to force or trying to play like hyper aggressive and not reset and not set up as much. And I feel like Vitality is one of those teams. So it just happened that like that style also worked well against Vitality, and Vitality sort of started dictating the progression of the group. And so Cloud9 are like, okay, we can play this into these types of compositions, into these types of play approaches, and we can win games this way. So I think it happened that Cloud9 had something in their arsenal already that they could pull out, and it worked well for them. So
I would just like to also, just for this one moment, point out to anyone who is a fan of a team called TSM that Cloud9 was in not only the group of death of the entire tournament, where you had all these teams who at least had some potential, but they also got the number 1 seed from China, who is the number 1 team in the world, and the reigning fucking world champion of worlds, literally with that lineup, and they got out the group. So all I'm going to say is all those past years where people cry, oh, the group is so hard for TSM. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, what sort of mad excuse is that? Like, if you're actually good, you win games. I don't know if you're aware of this. It's like it's sort of a secret to the game. So what about the Vitality aspect then? Because obviously Vitality was one of the teams where when you can get wins against RNG, when you can actually be able to 2-0 the Korean team, in a normal world, that's probably going to get you out, or at least a fucking tiebreaker, you'd hope. And in this one, they just done in third. So what was good about Vitality? How were they able to get any of this done?
They were just decisive. Really seemed like if a fight showed up, there never seemed like one person was kind of away from it. They really just all seemed to be on board. Like individual talent-wise, I don't think they're really like stacked at all. I don't think their laners are amazing. I mean, Jizuke did pretty good. And Kabashar does well, but he's getting a lot of like attention from Kikis overall, and he had the same thing in Europe as well. But like I actually think it's mainly just they're really decisive and punish teams that aren't ready to respond to whatever random fight they might look for. And I don't know. I feel like they're a team that's going to be really good over time, as long as they stay together for another year and get better individually and start laning better. But yeah, I don't know. It just really felt like they were just guys that were decisive. They were a better version of Echo Fox, basically. They would just take a fight, but they're all 5 down for it, and it works out, and they win the game.
I mean, I'm Vitality #1 fan, so I will be completely biased here. I actually don't think they have bad laners. I think that Attila is probably one of the guys that has the most pocket picks laning phase wise, especially the Draven and some other picks that he didn't pull out, like Misfortune. If he wanted to pull out the Misfortune, he could have it. And I think that's something quite good against RNG, because even though Uzi will not just auto lose the lane, but against some matchups like the Draven game that we had, it was not easy for him to play as he's used to. And Jizuke is he was actually smurfing the whole tournament, but one thing that happens to this team is that they are really dependent on their emotional status. So that's why you'll see games of Vitality where they seem to just roll over a team and everyone is destroying their lane, where you'll see another games of Vitality where they are just getting rolled over by whoever it is. And I think that kind of defines Vitality for this group. I think that they were a 50-50 team. You would go for a Vitality game, and it was impossible for you to predict the outcome. And I think for me, that's what's interesting from them, is that they could take a game out of RNG, and you couldn't really consider that like a huge upset, but they could lose a game against Mad, for example, and you wouldn't consider that an upset. That's what I like about a team like Vitality, young team full of energy, and I agree with you. I think that them sticking together, as long as they keep their identity, I think that they can be a really good team.
I think that Vitality will naturally kind of hit on how you confuse RNG a bit, which is make sure you get some pressure mid and then transfer it really, really hard to bot lane, because even RNG don't adjust well to their bottom lane losing. So if you have picks like Thresh and Draven that just happen to be like signature Attila Jack troll picks, and you can manage to play that out, then that's a way to beat RNG, and in at least a game, potentially more. So,
and here I come back to the scouting. Jack Troll throughout his whole career has more than 5k games of Thresh in solo queue, so yeah, just leave it open, please. I don't know. His second most played is Cannon.
Yeah, the supports from Europe have pretty scoutable champion pools, that's what I'm going to say.
Yes.
Okay. Right, if we move into Group C then, this was the group that on paper was actually supposed to be the most boring group, which is that unless you were from NA, most people thought that like KT wins easy. I think most people probably thought they win 6-0. And then depending on how much people thought Team Liquid was good or EDG, it was either going to be one of those two come second, and then I think everyone thought Mad Team was going to be crap, and that was... So parts of these played out, but let's start with this part. KT Roasted did lose a game, and they did lose to EDG. Now, Kelsey, I don't know why EDG shit the bed every other Worlds. Yeah?
Wasn't it KT Roster? Oh, yeah, right,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yes, those are the words I said, correct. Right, so KT Roasted did lose a game to EDG. The same EDG who bombs every other Worlds, never does anything that fucking means anything, lets everyone down. Why is it this time around, Kelsey, that EDG can beat KT Roasted? Super stacked, Hall of Fame Koreans, supposed to be destined to win this Worlds. What was different about this EDG?
It's It's actually so weird the way that KT drafted and played that game in general. I'm not saying it was like atypical of them, because I do think KT have games like that. Like they do that. So it's not that strange. But I would say for me, it was like kind of a difficult draft to play out outside of just a general plan of we're going to punish first pick Kaisa. And I also think that it's not that weird if you're talking about EDG, because EDG are a volatile team. Andre described Vitality as a team that can take a game off of RNG and have it not be weird, and then also lose a game to Mad and have it not be weird. And I remember on the last narrative week we did, I predicted they would take a game off of KT but still not get out of the group because they drop a game to Mad. So I think that's a pretty good way to describe EDG. I think they also have specific picks that work really, really well for them, like engage supports and a Kali or a Zir in the mid lane, something like this, and they can have a great game. So, yeah.
Inero, is EDG a good team?
I thought their bot lane looked pretty good, but overall they didn't really seem like anything impressive to me. They kind of seemed just around the same level as TL to me, just a lot less positioning errors. I didn't think anything of them. I don't expect them to go too far at all. I'm pretty sure they're out first round. They play who? RNG? No,
Fnatic.
Fnatic first? Yeah, no. I'm pretty sure they're out for sure. I wasn't really super impressed with them overall.
Yeah, I just think that iBoy did a decent tournament so far. Mm-hmm. Ray seems quite inconsistent, I would say. Scout the same. So I agree here. I think that they played good enough to leave the group in second, or a bit better than Team Liquid, saying in a different way. But I don't expect them to beat Fnatic on a best of 5.
Okay, so as I expected, the storyline here wasn't like headlines, EDG amazing team set for Sikwa. It was sort of like, it was basically just a different variant of fuck Team Liquid. So what did Team Liquid do so badly? Why didn't they get out the group? Why didn't they have a chance to, really? Even because I looked at this one, and to be fair, like, I know they won a game of EDG afterwards, but like this was so depressing if you were someone who actually wanted Team Liquid to be good. Yeah,
I don't know. It's really the same kind of story over and over that was like plagued TSM too. The way they play to win, I've been pretty critical of this. It works in NA, and it's not good overall, but it always seems like throughout the split, they're down to keep that because it's working. The positioning errors that people were like calling out on stream and stuff, like that type of stuff doesn't get punished in NA as much, so you get used to doing it and you build these habits. And if you're not constantly hitting that stuff in practice, you're not going to build up on it. They don't use side lanes very well. Like Impact will leave his wave, even if it's going to like crash at like an even point and their top laner's still there. He'll run mid to look to like start a fight because they're looking for a Baron or a Dragon or some other objective. If it works, cool, they win the game. If it doesn't, he just lost a wave of experience. They lost priority. They're going to lose whole map control off that. It happens all the time in all of their games. They don't fight on their like power windows very well. Like in the finals but the semifinal match we played against them in spring, like they would walk up and just fight a dragon and they're not supposed to, and we would leave, which is us being bad as a team, but it works for them. So they got the dragon they should never get, and then they win games off of this in NA, and they come to Worlds and they do the exact same thing, and it really only feels like the like only redeeming factor on that team is their bot lane. And it sucks that works and we can send teams that do this to Worlds, but laning phase wise doesn't feel like they keep up. Pobelter been a liability. It just doesn't look great. Impact, I mean, he goes okay, but he's generally in a losing position in lanes, like below average on what matchups should be like. He's generally always sitting there pretty poor. I just don't think they changed how they played the game the entire season, and it really sucks to see. And I think it's an NA problem overall that's causing this. Can't really fault TL for it too much. Obviously, they can improve on this stuff if their practice is good, but it's just sad to see again and again, and this is the same problem.
I mean, you know, the funny thing about that, because I thought this would be a good topic to discuss, is like most people tunneled on the fact that like Doublelift was the only member of all of these teams we're talking about, CLG, TSM, and now Team Liquid. But I actually think the more notable aspect is these are all number one seeds from NA. And so whatever they do in NA clearly works. It's making you the number one seed. You win in the summer split. You've been the most dominant team. But for some reason, when you get to international play, either you're easy to upset or you're just not as good as the top teams. There's clearly something to there. Now, obviously, I'm sure each team has slightly different specific idiosyncrasies. But do you have any sort of like a meta spitball angle on this, Kelsey, as to what you think it is?
It's interesting because I remember we had Locodoco on before MSI, and he had this really weird way of phrasing why he thinks Team Liquid's macro is good, which is they know when to give up waves to contest objectives. And I feel like there's this just inherent mentality that for some reason waves priority or control doesn't matter, and you can watch through the games like Pobelter is giving up more and more CS to go, oh, we're going for this contest here. And then it's like the enemy mid laner will have a gigantic item spike over him suddenly. And it's not because he's necessarily playing bad, though we can talk about that if we want to, but it's because of just like their philosophy towards the game, which seems really bizarre to me, but it seems to be a persistent problem, as Inero explained in North America, that people think that this kind of play is good. So I don't know.
It just works. It works in an A. It's way too easy to work. So many teams are happy. Just stall for late. A team's going to 5v5 you. People don't play for side lanes. As long as you wait, you can probably stall them from doing Baron because it's going to be 5-on-5 at Baron. You just throw some stuff at them. They'll probably back off because it just works. Really, like we did stuff in side lane on Echo Fox. We weren't exactly good at it, but it works because teams don't do anything to that. And, I mean, this is the same problem that plagued 100 Thieves. It's just impossible for them to win because they can't play this style and have not learned how to play around it. And I don't know how much of it is just down to like players getting picked off is just like player mistake, or if they're calling for rotations like this and getting themselves killed, or calling to move like that, and it's just their like team style, or if it's just individual. But it's just problematic overall. But not really a TL problem; it's an NA problem.
But I think that what you're talking about of them being caught in rotations, I actually think that's literally the source of the issue, and the source of the issue would become side lanes, because it's like a lot of times what I see is that obviously a team got priority, so what they will do is just group mid and try to brute force the mid tower. You have two options. First option, you don't give a shit about side lanes, so you group mid again, you defend the mid tower, and once you go back to the side waves, they'll group again because they have prio once again, and they'll just chip you down the mid tower. Second option is that you go on sides, you drop the mid tower, you push the waves on, and then you're the one rotating and attacking their mid tower. And you have these two options. And I think that since NA always goes for the first option, what happens is that everyone can just chill on their route through the lanes, because no one will be there since everyone is mid. And with that, I kind of completely agree with you. And I think that part of the issues that Team Liquid had, and especially after hearing the Doublelift interview about the talks on what happened inside of the team, etc., I kind of wonder myself was it just an issue of NA, or did Team Liquid actually had severe internal issues? And if that happened, is that the common factor from Doublelift on every team that he was in? That's kind of the question that I make to myself.
I think the first seed point that Thorin made is relevant, because I can see some of this stuff in Flash Wolves as well, where I feel like Flash Wolves just never adapt when they come to these tournaments, because they're so used to just being completely like the only vaguely relevant team in LMS. And then they have to deal with, oh, we've been playing wrong this whole time, and there's like a sudden scramble for how do we play out correctly. I feel like probably something similar happens to first seeds from NA, and they end up in a similar situation.
Yeah, I think teams. Yeah, go on. I think teams tried too hard. Like once they have a lead, or like not a lead like in a game, but like in the season, like they're number one in the season, they're already like basically set for playoffs. Teams, I think, are way too content to just keep doing what's winning, rather than, okay, we suck at this, let's just be playing this in practice the whole week, go on stage, and no matter what, go out and play this on practice. Who cares if you lose? Really, all that matters is that you got in the playoffs. If you're caring that much about seeding, I think you're really insecure approaching playoffs in the first place. Because if you're placing like 6th or 2nd in playoffs, who gives a shit really? Like you're bad. Like you're not first, so your team probably sucks. And I think teams need to start taking that approach, especially in North America. Try something different. Cool, if it doesn't work, the community is going to flame you. Who cares? Those people also don't know what they're talking about for the most part. Focus on yourself. Focus on getting better at what you're weak at and sticking to that. And I feel like that's like stuff like TSM didn't do back in the day either. I know there was like a time where people were talking about they were trying like a different type of play style with things to attempt doing that. But it's really important to diversify this stuff and work on those weaknesses and kind of create practice that makes those weaknesses that you have in your like already set play very available to constantly show up in practice. So you can start fixing it and running into that. And it really doesn't feel like that happens very often.
But I think that there's a big difference though between you doing that with some of your weaknesses, so you just try to fix them in competitive games as well, or completely changing your style and just try a different style to try to diversify your strategy. And that's what I think it was the approach of Misfits, where they just, okay, we are playing for bot. We managed to snowball every time. Instead of working on how can we translate those advantages into mid game, they decided, okay, let's play for top, see if we can do the same. Doesn't work well, a lot of issues inside of the team goes boom, split goes boom. And I think that it's just important to do what you're saying, but just recognizing that fixing your mistakes, and just because one thing works in your region doesn't mean that is the best way to do it. It's just different from you to try to just expand completely your styles.
Well, yeah, that's the coach's job. Like, if you're going to try to do other practice and you think it's leading towards your team going boom, like you have to, fix that for yourself.
Yeah.
As a coach, you have to see that coming and like pivot, so that way you keep everything stable in your team. So if stuff happens wrong with that, that's usually like a coaching problem rather than team dynamic problem.
And it's easy to kind of say that too, because obviously if you're coming at this from a perspective of someone who's like worked in Europe or something, what teams they're doing in Europe is domestically worked kind of at this Worlds. And they tried to do the same thing, right? They tried to do what worked domestically. TL did, at least. They tried to do what worked domestically and it didn't. So it kind of sucks. Blows, I guess.
Yeah, like I don't want to blame TL too much, because really it's like everyone else that's in ALCS is helping to cause this problem that's limiting them. There's stuff they can do, but it's really like all of us in NA need to fix this shit and fix how we're practicing to actually, just become better and make the people that we're sending better in general.
On the topic that Andre brought up earlier, we brought up the Doublelift issue, where Doublelift was one of the only common denominators in the 4 teams that were the number 1 seeds that blew it from NA. Right, whenever people talk about Doublelift in the NALCS, the reason why it wasn't a surprise to me he's the MVP is everyone just raves about like how far ahead he is in CS numbers and how every game he's doing so well, and the whole team's obviously in this particular lineup set up around him as a player. Sure, in TSM they had Bjergsen, and in the CLG team they had great shot calling in theory, etc. But if you have your whole team set up around you in that way, right, this almost sounds like the way people who don't watch China stereotype RNG, like it's just Royal Club from Season 3 and it's all Uzi carries the game. At the same time, the team is sort of set up around Doublelift, so it's not about whether he played trash, but is there some sort of problem translating that to international players? Is there some reason why it's not as effective?
Biggest difference between RNG and Team Liquid is that Team Liquid just give up waves, whereas RNG give them to UZI. So.
Yes,
they're just giving it to the wrong player, right? I see.
No, they're giving them to no one. They're giving them to turrets, ether, etc. So,
I also think that it's really hard, or it's really different when you're playing against a better quality laners, and basically. If you want to set up, for example, for Doublelift, you're usually sacrificing something on the other side of the map, and you're quite used, especially that's the feeling that I got from Impact in NA. You're quite used to being sacrificed and still winning your lane, and even with jungle pathing to the other side and you're having no jungle attention, and as Inero already said here, Pobelter being given. Some matchups, either winning matchups or losing matchups, and doing accordingly to that matchup, but then going into international events and he cannot win winning matchups and he just gets heart stomped on losing matchups. So I honestly think that it's not Doublelift issue. I think that the whole setup around him does not work against better players and better teams.
And I kind of made a joke, but I do think that RNG put a lot of work into knowing how to play around UCI so that it's efficient, right? They're not wasting a ton of resources by making sure that he's in a good position. Like even in a situation, for example, where they want Xiaohu to have a good mid matchup so that he can be pushed out if something happens top. He can teleport top defensively, and UZI can go mid and catch the bouncing wave if no one else is going to be there for it. Like things like this make sure that they're at least thinking about the map setup in relation to how they're using UZI, which I feel like TL don't really think about like how to be efficient as much as they think about, okay, well, we have to sacrifice to get Doublelift off the ground. And I think there's just like a slight difference in the way that they're approaching this.
Okay.
Just one other thing is that with this, I'm not saying that these players or the players around Doublelift are bad. I actually think that individually they are quite good. One thing though is that the reasoning why I said what I said is because I think that they cannot create routines that can make them as effective as, for example, RNG on that style, because they are not punished as they should when they are making a mistake, and because the outcomes of their laning phase especially is not what it was supposed to be on players that have the same skill level. And so they just get wrong ideas with wrong routines, and then they just fall apart at roles.
Well, that also, I would have to say, is another trend you could draw between all those number one seeds, CLG, TSM, Team Liquid, is like the number of times they've had like among the stronger laners, and they've had like 2 to 3 winning lanes in any, and then they go internationally. And it's like that old thing about when you have like a rookie jungler. Like to me, this is like the best example of when like contracts joined Cloud9. Everyone's like, holy shit, look how amazing this guy is. It's like, mate, he literally has like all the best players around him. Like, what do you want him to do? Like, just feed the whole fucking game when all his laners are ahead. Like, let me see him when a lane's behind all the time. That's what I'd like to see what he's going to do. So, similarly, yeah, you're obviously going to have all your legs cut out from under you. Right, what about this then? So, when we talk about Group D, I thought this is a group we should spend the least amount of time on, because realistically, like, it was just what order number 1 and number 2 were coming in this group. Like, I don't care where anyone else is. There was just never any chance of that. Like, I have to say, that's the one. I will just say this one thing, right? Everyone else who got completely their shit kicked out of them, who was from NA for downplaying EU, not predicting EU, not giving enough love to EU, whatever the reasons were, right? Nearly all of them, I could give like a devil's advocate argument as to like, come on guys, like, you know, Marxy actually does often criticize teams anyway. And you know what, like Azael doesn't really probably watch so much EU LCS, and so he probably just went off the plate. You know, I could give you all these reasons, but the one person I will not spare is like, Raz, you did that to yourself, mate. What the fuck were you doing trying to imply that 100 Thieves is going to win that game over Fnatic? Like, you earned that one. Like, you have to just take that on the chin. Like, listen, I like the ballsy out of nowhere pick, but there was no rationale behind that. Like, that is just one of those ridiculous like narrative picks. I think they just do it anyway. It's like, whatever. Because he simultaneously later said that he still thought Fnatic was like stronger on the better team, but that they were going to lose it. So I'm still not sure how he tried to rationalize that. That sounded like some Prophet Crumbs level like reach on that one. So I don't know. But anyway, so we'll just talk about the 2 teams that matter in this group. So let's start with this one, right? Inero, what do you think of Invictus Gaming after seeing them in this group?
Really think they're actually pretty good. I actually think they can make a possible run on the right side of the bracket if Ning starts playing better. They have clearly the best mid laner, I think, in the tournament. It's just unfortunate that like your mid laner is only going to really be as good as your jungler, and Ning is kind of inting it a bit. I really think that's the only reason why like Fnatic like won over it. I think Caps is great. I think Caps doesn't necessarily generate leads and matchups that he should have on his own very well, but he's probably one of the best at snowballing once he has a small lead. And seems like for IG, they'd get a lead in mid. They would mess up around a mid jungle 2v2 they shouldn't be messing up, or Ning's just going to go for a play and just gets randomly destroyed by Broxa. It really didn't feel like IG were losing the game like just from being like the worst team overall most of the time. Just individual mistakes coming from like the jungle side overall, I wasn't really happy to see. But I mean, if that shapes up, like I don't know how, like if Ning had those problems overall, like in China, like everything from what like I read and saw about was that IG had like a pretty easy run through the regular season and weren't like challenged too well until they got to playoffs. So I don't know how much I can really gauge off of like their jungle strength there, but it seemed really, really poor. Like against all of the teams overall, didn't really seem that great, even though 100 Thieves and G-Rex weren't like amazing. But I still think they're a great team. I still think they can have a chance at pushing through it as long as like the way jungle and mid are interacting is a lot better.
I mean, their best of fives against RNG were quite close.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like I feel like they're not bad. It was just against Fnatic, because of the fact that mid jungle they play really well together. Like it punishes that, and likely against other teams, IG probably won't struggle with this as much because of the fact that they have such a, I think like a higher mid difference against some of the teams they'll possibly play. Maybe overall, without like actually seeing the groups play together first, could lead to that not being as much of an issue.
I still think that IG cannot win with or only at the back of Rookie, while Fnatic can actually win most of the times at the back of Caps, even though I don't think that it's their only win condition as it was before. But Fnatic can do that. I still think that IG cannot solo win at the back of Rookie. Even though I consider that Rookie played better than Caps on the group stage, I will not say the words that Rookie is better than Caps, obviously, but I think that he played better. But I think that it's extremely important for them to have a side lane to translate that advantage on. As you said, I think they are good translating that advantage. But as we saw on those two cases, or on the two games that they lost against Fnatic, I think that they never had two hard winning lanes, or at least on the only game that I think they had a winning top and a winning mid, their jungle was just completely out of tempo and just answering to whatever Broxah was doing, so they couldn't translate that advantage. But still think that that's a winning condition of them. So I actually think it's a team that will depend a lot on being on the red side, honestly. Yeah, that's kind of the feeling that I got from them, because their bot lane can blind pick almost everything. But Rookie and Duke, if they have winning matchups, I think IG is really fucking strong.
The easiest way to explain IG is people would look at blue side win rates across regions throughout the season, and they would say, why is LPL the only region with a higher red side win rate? Well, it's like, have you seen Invictus Gaming? But I do think that the way that they do lose often is mid jungle, and this is why I brought up that even if you don't think that Caps and Broxah are better players, then I always believe that their mid jungle synergy is better. And Fnatic play from bot to mid, whereas I feel like IG want to play from mid to bot. The other way around. So they will try to get pressure in mid and translate it there. But because their mid jungle synergy isn't that great, they're not going to consistently do that. And then Jackie Love will also kind of suffer from stage fright sometimes. Like he was doing pretty well throughout the group stage, but I do think that he had some misplays near the end. And like he had the really great first game against Fnatic, for example, when they made that work. And then Fnatic also are just a team that, in general, seem better prepared to play against a team that really wants to get a huge lead through mid and transfer their advantages, because they will 3-man, they will 4-man mid, and make that really, really hard for a single mid laner to move. So
I think that is like the biggest way to get through Fnatic, though, and I think that's why like IG weren't successful, just because the mid jungle difference wasn't like in favor of IG. Because I think Fnatic's mid jungle, even if I don't think Caps is better than Rookie, like they play way better through mid jungle. I feel like teams have to play through Fnatic's mid to shut that down, because eventually, even though Caps also has like the issue of like inting his lane sometimes as well, and like just randomly killing himself against people he shouldn't, which by the way, he almost did to Ryu twice, and Ryu is not a good laner. This is just Caps in general and what I've known about him forever. Fnatic are all, like you're saying, super willing to just go mid and help this guy. Like they are all committed to their team identity of being around Caps and Caps succeeding for the most part. Like someone goes on caps in mid, fucking Soaz in top lane, instantly is teleporting on a minion, whether it's going to screw his lane over or not, is already just committed to it to stop this from happening. But I feel like doing that to Fnatic and forcing those like small advantages off of that, if you're able to do that successfully and still get a lead through mid and snowball off of that, like that is where Fnatic for the most part loses. Because I feel like in top and bot lane, it's mainly just that they're so stable for the most part. And that stability allows them to play around their mid and to commit more resources to mid and allow that to carry. But if you're able to throw that off balance in any way, pretty sure Fnatic can lose. But I think Fnatic's an insane team at this tournament, and I really expect to see them in finals. I don't really think there's a huge excuse for them to not make it to finals on this. So it's been really exciting watching them.
Let's transition then into discussing the first round matchup. So let's talk about Fnatic EDG then, so we can keep it going. Andre, Fnatic EDG, set it up for me.
I honestly think that.
I will just say, by the way, for anyone who's seen Andreas' Twitter, he has just picked every single European team to win every single game. He's even picked Cloud9 to beat the freak of freaks. The only reason he picked Katie Rolster to win is because fuck China, presumably. So obviously that's just trolling. He's now going to give us the real
What you mean? What you mean it's just trolling? No, just this wildcard regions need to learn their lesson.
Okay.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
I like that.
No, but it's. I think that Fnatic will not have a hard time against EDG. I honestly think that one of the things that Fnatic fixed a lot is that before they could only play bot through mid and that was it. But now they actually learn how to translate that advantage into bot again, which makes their snowball way faster because then they also rotate way faster. And I actually think that one of the big steps that Fnatic gave is that Reckless now seems comfortable with Hylissang roaming, which he wasn't before. And that's the way that I think you should attack Fnatic, not through mid, but through the support that Caps gets on mid. And with that being said, I think that EDG does not have the tools in order to stop Broxa and Hylissang to help mid, and after that just destroying the whole game plan that Fnatic has. And because of that, I honestly think that Fnatic will just do their regular shit of getting prio mid with man advantage, taking or killing mid at least, rotating into bot, taking first tower, rotating bot, inting on a fight around Herald, and after that just come back into the game and then winning the game. So I think EDG though can take one game out of Fnatic, a game that Wipo is playing and he gets perma-ganked by contesting every CS and they carry the game through top. So I think 3-1 for Fnatic.
I think that that's one place where EDG can have some advantages. EDG is the team as old as time, is always just let everyone go bot all the time, guys. It's super cool. But that's one way they can get an advantage. But I don't think that this is a team that will even necessarily draft for that. Like they kind of have it within their philosophy as if we have a losing matchup in bot, we'll still outplay you. Sort of weird mentality. And then I think that, I think that that's kind of, for me, it's easy for Fnatic to deal with EDG's early game and at least stall it out. But EDG get really lost when they're setting up Barons, especially around red side, because they really only know how to deal with Baron vision contests by having their support phase check. And that's part of why like you have Mako known for only being able to play kind of tankier Alistair type supports, is because they really sort of rely on him to take the lead in vision control and through that the mid late game. And I think that should be a place where EDG can kind of do well, because iBoy is ballsy. iBoy will take over a team fight sometimes. He'll also int sometimes, but he can be very effective in that sense. But I just don't think that they're organized enough to take on Fnatic in a team fight scenario. So I don't see a lot of openings, and I actually kind of think this will be a 3-0. So
yeah, I'm really just saying I think Fnatic wins for sure. I really have no doubt in it. I don't think EG looked great. I don't think there was anything really remarkable about them. Meanwhile, Fnatic were looking pretty good at their setup in the actual game. They're Their laners are playing well for the most part. I don't think anything will go wrong. In the top side, playing against Ray, pretty sure so as Buipo, whichever one is actually playing there, is going to be fine, even though they're not the strongest individual laner. Don't see any issues. I'm pretty sure it's 3-0 as well.
Okay. Right, what about this then? Yeah, what were we going to say, Andrew?
No. It's I mean, the only thing I had left to say is that I don't think iBoy can get a big lead because iBoy is not one of the AD carries that Reckless has a mental block. So I think he'll just play fine.
It's interesting because I feel like in order for a Chinese AD carry to really become great internationally, he has to go through Fnatic. You have Wishao, you have VeXii, so iBoy, this could be your chance, you know? This is the path to glory.
Okay. Right, we have to speed it up a little bit on the next ones, okay? So we'll just go, just big, broad thoughts, or if you've got, a specific interest in detail of the matchup, just give me that straight up. So, RNG versus G2. Now, Andre, you can start on this one, because if you really believe any of that bullshit in your pick'em, I want to know how they're going to win this game. So go ahead, mate. Go on.
Okay, so G2 will pick Heimerdinger on the first 2 games, win the first 2, then lose 2, and then they will pick Jin Tam Kench. Uzi will not be able to deal with the Tam Kench of the did. And after that, since G2 plays, why are you laughing? I don't understand. Since G2 plays 1-3-1, RNG will not be able to funnel all the resources into Uzi, so Wunder will 1v9.
Yeah. I don't think Uzi's ever seen anyone pick Tam Kench, so he's obviously going to be like, Nani, and then they're like, oh, man, whoa, no, it's in there, so... The old meme. I don't think any of that's going to happen, but okay, fair enough.
3-1 for RNG. Fuck my life. That way I'm always right? Either I'm right here or in my pick'em.
Exactly.
I think it's 3-0 RNG. Even though I think it's a good matchup for Wunder. I don't know, man. Unless they just leave Heimer out. If they leave Heimer up, I think it's a free win because their bot lane's going to have just a free win, and then I think top lane will win. If you're leaving Heimer up at this point, I really think you're trolling. I really think you're griefing your team, but I don't know. It might happen.
Yeah. I think RNG want the glory. They're going to do it. They're going to do it one game. They're going to leave it up, and that'll be a 3-1. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, sadly, the part that kind of cock teases this matchup is you want to believe because G2 got out of the group and they're like, oh, they're beating Korean teams. Oh my God. It's like, mate, if you could just go back in time and slide a fucking cheat sheet to all those teams in their group and just go ban some of these, they're like, I don't think they're even in this particular playoff matchup. So sadly, the hype for that's just dead for me, right? Let's go to this one then. So what about, I think one of the most exciting matchups has to be the KT versus IG matchup, because obviously IG actually is, most people think they're going to be a strong team here. Some people think they can win Worlds. KT has an incredible looking lineup, obviously won their group, right? Inero, who wins this one, KT or IG?
I think KT win, and I think whoever wins between these two wins the whole tournament. If IG wins, I think RNG wins. If KT wins, KT wins it all, I'm pretty sure. I really don't know how to break it down, to be honest, between them. I haven't seen these teams play out at all, really. I am so hopeful that KT wins it. I really just wasn't a huge fan of how IG was playing with Ning. So I'm hopeful that they win, and I really want to see KT win and prove that Korea is not just breaking down as a whole as a region and just becoming bad. So I'm definitely putting everything behind KT. But I don't know. Like I said earlier, IG could definitely run it through the group if the mid-jungle problems aren't an issue against any of these other teams. Because I do think Fnatic has one of the best mid-jungle duos to play out. So playing against KT, that is another insanely strong mid-jungle duo. So that's their biggest test. If they can break through that, then yeah, I think they can definitely compete through the whole tournament and hopefully win. But yeah, KT.
Okay. Right, Kelsey, who's going to win this?
I feel almost like KT is the eventual mature point of IG where they're still a little bit cocky and a little bit selfish and a little bit, okay, we're playing 3 single lanes of Howling Abyss, but I think that they're way more together and way more generally controlled than IG, even if they do still have some of that spark. And they do a bunch of weird things like swap against priority and stuff like this that just makes it really hard for them to regain the tempo that they started to gain. And so when they draft like really, really lane focused compositions, it can be a bad thing for them. But I think IG can win a couple or at least one red side game, but it should be heavily KT favored because yeah, and I think this matchup will matter a lot to Rookie, obviously. So I can imagine him just like popping off and taking over, but I still think it has to be KT favored. I don't think IG are that good. I'm not nearly as high on them as Inero. I think that they have a lot of issues in terms of how they want to set up the map, in terms of just they don't really care that much about resets. I've used that criticism against KT as well, but it's just like I don't see IG doing that well this series. Like I'll be bold and I'll say it'll be a KT 3-0. So
okay, right. The last matchup then is the Afrika Freaks versus the Cloud9 one. So we've got two teams with like different hype coming from the group stage. Inero, can Cloud9 actually win this series?
Yeah, I actually think this is the other matchup that's going to be like a bit of a hype one compared to the KT-IG. Not that I think either of these teams are going to go far, but I think Cloud9 has the ability to win purely because some of the problems that Afrika has in mid-game are problems that NA teams have. So it should be kind of a similar type of feeling for C9 in the actual games. I think the biggest problem for C9 is the bot lane's huge liability. They can't lane at all. Pretty sure Afrika's bot lane can probably look to punish that. But what I really want to see is the top lane matchup, see how keen Licorice goes. If Licorice is able to consistently just win matchups top, that could definitely turn and make it so that the bot disadvantage isn't as problematic for the team as a whole, and then they can maybe win. But overall, still thinking that it's probably going to be Afrika winning 3-2, but would really like to see C9 actually come out so we can have a full Western semifinal for once. That is me being a fanboy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fine. It's definitely being biased as long as you admit it up front.
I think I can see where Inero is coming from, saying that they have some mid-game problems that NA teams have in terms of just kind of playing more conservatively or not necessarily wanting to be super aggressive. But at the same time, I think that Cloud9 rely a little bit on forward positioning and mid to make some of their signature compositions work. And I don't think Afrika do that. So I would say that even if Afrika just kind of play the way they did against G2, they should be able to win the series. So I would say Afrika win this pretty well. Like I don't think any of these quarterfinals are extremely close. So
I actually think this one is quite close though.
Okay.
And the only reason why I think it's close, it's because I think that the aggression of Cloud9 can make this series unpredictable. And that's literally the only thing. I think Afrika is a better team, even though they didn't play that well. But I also think that Cloud9, even though they got through off that group of that, played extremely well. What I think is that they played aggressive, they played unexpected, and that surprised a lot of teams. But I think that Afrika is also a team that cannot deal properly with uncontrolled aggression. And if Cloud9 brings that to the table, I actually think that there is a chance to them, even though I think they are not favorites.
Okay. What about this then? Let's end on this. Like, since we've got 8 teams right now, everyone has to pick who their winner of Worlds is. So, Kelsey, who wins Worlds from these 8 teams?
I am going to go with RNG still, so.
And no reason changed?
Not really. I mean, I'm a bit more worried about them, but I do think that they showed, because they're not playing as much of the versatility that I have seen from them in the past, but I do think that they adapted really fast after losing 2 games and realizing kind of what the problem was, at least inherently in their draft. So that gives me some confidence in them. So I still think that they win.
Right, André, give me the inevitable answer. Why though? Aside from where you were born.
No. I actually think that Fnatic has quite a good chances of just winning the whole tournament. First of all, they managed to beat the powerhouse of Schalke in the final. and that makes them an incredible strong team. But a bit more serious.
So that's why you think G2 is good as well, right? Okay, now I understand. It all makes sense all of a sudden.
the Schalke from Gauntlet never existed. That never happened.
Fair enough. Okay.
But I actually think that Fnatic has a easy run through the finals. I think that they match against all the 3 teams that are on their side, and if they meet RNG, I actually think RNG might be a bit easier for them than KT, for an unexplainable reason, where I think that Reckless will finally pop off against Uzi, and that mid lane will just be an absolute murder. I just think that if you take Invictus Gaming out of there, and obviously KT, I think that Fnatic can dominate every other 2v2 jungle. So expecting RNG to reach to the final, I actually think Fnatic has a chance against them from the 2v2 jungle and from Reckless just having a solid series.
Okay.
And
I like that angle,
actually series.
No, I like your angle where you even say it's like sort of inexplicable. You're going with the logic of like, since it's never happened, it's got to happen eventually.
Yeah.
That Reckless just goes ham completely. Like I assume, they make finals, Fnatic. Like all of a sudden, just before he's going on stage, Reckless gets a call on his cell phone. It's coming from like an unknown number in Greece somewhere. It's Forgiven. He's just like, come on, you rat, you're in the finals. Like, just gives him some epic speech, pumps him up a bit, maybe just says some shit like, here's an idea. You're not better than him, but just let yourself get carried like you did every other time. It worked against me. And then he goes, oh shit, yeah, I can do that. And then they win the match off actually having a good mid laner. So it could be that one, right? Come on, who's going to win Worlds in Inero?
I think KT. I actually do agree with Andre that if RNG end up going to finals, it's way better for Fnatic. I think KT's mid-jungle duo is definitely the one that can compete with Fnatic's the best and is probably better overall. But I'm pretty sure that if they go to finals, which I'm expecting them to do, they'll beat Fnatic. It'll be a close series. I'm honestly imagining like 3-1, but one of the wins is going to be like an actual close loss for Fnatic. But yeah, I'm really hopeful KT wins, and I'm pretty sure they should win overall.
This video was kindly supported by Andreas, Snazore, Westerlund, Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Landon Thompson, NateDOhDoubleG, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, James Harding, Daniel Yordanov, VeXii, Robert Baxter, and a special thanks goes out, as always, to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Would you like to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Would you fancy a few teasers for what's coming up in my content? How about taking part in an esports discussion with me? Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.